on federal investigations, an overview of the different types of jobs that are available, as well as some commentary about my experience in over 15 years of federal service. My name is Colin May, and I am a professor of forensic studies and criminal justice. This was originally written back in 2007. It was modified a couple years later, and so even after 10 years, it's hard to believe that this presentation is still relevant. I did make some significant updates here in June of 2020, but I hope that's helpful, and I hope you enjoy it. So the neat thing about working in the federal service is that there is basically one employer with many different paths. There are different options from federal law enforcement, typical FBI, DEA, ATF, all the way to regulatory and administrative investigations, inspector general and compliance and oversight, audit and financial analysis, as well as intelligence analysis and research. A lot of different varying options depending on where you are in your career, what your interests are, family and situation in life. All these things can really be a great opportunity to work for one employer for your whole career in different capacities, and then be able to move around. So a couple caveats. Starting early is very, very helpful, but don't be discouraged. It is a long process. It is an arcane process, to be frank. It's they're working on improving it, but it's not the easiest employment avenue. So my advice to everyone is to get experience, any kind of experience. We'll talk more specifically about different types of experiences, but it's of course easier to have that than to jump directly into a job, or seeking a job rather, that may not materialize immediately. So definitely don't worry about that. Keep your eye on the ball. Understand the long-term goal, but certainly don't discount the fact that this is a journey, and there may be different milestones and different experiences for you throughout the process. Certainly changes in budget and administration and priorities can modify many of these things, sometimes for the better, sometimes for worse. So consider that process, and obviously that ebbs and flows throughout the years. Look at all of the agencies that are available, even ones that you don't necessarily want to work for, just to get an understanding of who they are, how they operate, what they do, and what the various options are in terms of employment. There are many different types of programs and experiences, authorities and hiring opportunities depending on where you are. For example, there's a special preference for veterans. There's also a program called Pathways for new graduates. There's also the PMI, or Presidential Management Internship Program, which is an excellent opportunity to join the federal government and move around. Also consider internships, both paid and unpaid, and then certainly other hiring paths that belong to different groups of people or attributes. So be open to all of those. So in this presentation, we won't get into the specific mechanics of federal hiring, but I do want to highlight some issues just to bring them to your attention in terms of specific areas to consider in terms of becoming or joining a federal agency, both in general and then specifically those that really have an important responsibility in terms of investigating, auditing, and oversight and enforcement. First of all, almost all these positions are subject to some type of background investigation. How deep that is, what that entails, certainly that process takes a while, and obviously the more complicated it is, the longer that part will take. But it is important to remember that it's really critical to disclose all adverse information, including prior arrests, misconduct and drug use, and as well as financial issues, because when you explain those and you can provide documents and give the full context, that makes a much easier decision for the adjudicator. Additionally, they will do neighbor interviews and academic record reviews often, so be prepared for signing releases and authorizations for that information. Secondarily, if it requires a security clearance, that has become more of an ongoing program where there's a continuous monitoring aspect of it. Some positions, such as the IRS, require a tax review, either before entry or even ongoing in some instances for some positions. Again, with the security clearance, some require a polygraph examination. And then there's also the physical fitness and medical exam. So these are all things to take into consideration based on your specific circumstance, your history, your desires, where you think you could go. So just be mindful of them. So in the federal system, every job has a job series. Usually it's a 4-digit numeric representation of what classification or class of types of tasks this job entails. Most everyone is familiar with the idea of a special agent, criminal investigator, and these belong to the 1811 series. They are law enforcement officers. They receive law enforcement availability pay, which is 25% on top of your regular salary. That is in lieu of overtime, so you generally do not get overtime compensation, but that you do have that 25% availability. Usually it means average of 2 extra hours per day on work-related throughout either the year or the period. They can make arrests, serve subpoenas and search warrants, as well as conduct grand jury investigations and testify. The key skills for almost all criminal investigators are the ability to interview, the ability to do document reviews, and the ability to write reports. Those are the key areas that certainly many jobs do, but absolutely the criminal investigators need to be able to do. Mobility agreements, you generally have to sign these, and this is one of those areas where the agency, if the need arises, can move you. Obviously it would be at their own cost, but you sign that mobility agreement knowing that there is a likelihood, sometimes high, sometimes moderate, sometimes very slim, but that they can move the position to suit the agency needs. Occasionally, depending on the position, there can be very long hours. It can also be very dangerous, and in some instances very boring, like surveillance when nothing is happening. The positions also frequently travel, either locally or nationally. They do also have foreign postings as well. Most 1811s have initial training at either the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center, the DEA or the FBI Academy in Quantico, Virginia, or the Postal Inspection Service Academy. Depending on the program, it can range from 3 to 6 months or longer. Many times firearms and physical tactics are an important element, as well as legal training, investigative training, and administrative training. Most agencies have a post-basic academy add-on. For example, the ICE Academy or for Homeland Security investigation. And this is really to welcome you to the agency and give you a deeper dive into the authorities and mission and duties and procedures that that particular component or agency will do. There's also ongoing training, physical fitness, medical exams. The Inspector General's Academy also has courses as well as external training. So the opportunity to do training is very good. Of course, except in budget years where they've slashed training. So let's talk about some of the agencies. Many people are familiar with FBI, DEA, ATF, Homeland Security, and Secret Service. But there are a number of other agencies across the government that have 1811 authorities. For example, I worked for the Department of Commerce Office of Export Enforcement. It's a very small agency, it's very specialized, but there's a number of other agencies that are out there. Many of them are small, so it's harder to get into, but sometimes it's just a matter of knowing who is out there, what they do, and how they operate. For example, many of my classmates were with the Diplomatic Security Service, DSS, and many of them, most of them, went overseas. So that is a very different mindset and training than the other few people in my class who were with the Environmental Protection Agency's Criminal Investigation Division. They're much more focused on things like hazardous materials and dumping and those types of investigations. And then of course there's all the inspectors general. We'll get more into those later. Moving from 1811 to an 1810, 1810 is more of a general investigator. They may or may not have law enforcement or subpoena powers. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. It all depends. But 1810 is generally a catch-all series for a lot of other types of non-law enforcement investigators, especially administrative or internal. Again, this is where interviews and record reviews and banks reviews, HR records, all these types of things may work to resolve limited criminal or administrative or regulatory issues. Again, many great benefits to these types of positions. Of course, and many of them do not have all of the downsides of an 1811 job. But of course, they may not be as interesting or robust, certainly not executing search warrants generally. So again, all considerations to take into account. The 1801 is really the catch-all. This includes a wide variety of both law enforcement and non-law enforcement. And if you are looking to move into an 1811 type of position, this is a great way to get in the door. There are what are called investigative assistants, as well as other full-fledged investigators or compliance officers that belong to the 1801 series. Great work, great experience. For example, the federal air marshals are classified under the 1801 series. So if you see those types of positions available, that's what these would be classified as. So again, the key is to know what's out there, and we'll talk about that in a minute. There are a wide range of other positions to consider, and this is really important. So for 1811, there is an age limit. 37 is the current age limit, and sometimes people come late to the game, and that's okay because they have a lot of experience. That just because you may be in that category should not preclude you from considering federal service as a wonderful career opportunity. There are so many different other positions that do investigations, that do investigative support, that really move the process forward, and you can actually use many of the same skills. In fact, in some instances, you can actually even gain more skills because of some of the administrative burdens on the criminal investigators. That you really are doing the investigation, and they are kind of making the mechanics happen in order to get the data, get evidence, and you are putting the pieces together. Auditors and financial analysts, forensic accountants, management and program analysts, intelligence research specialists, computer forensics and digital evidence examiners, litigation support and technology personnel, paralegals, legal assistants. Cast a wide net. Absolutely cast a very wide net, because any federal position that gets you close and gets you exposure to the mission and skills of investigations is key. That's what you want, because once you get in there, then your ability to move up, move over, move around, get new experiences is much better. Many of these auditors, performance evaluators, inspectors, and investigators come from offices of Inspector General, which is a independent oversight. There are varying levels. This is well beyond the scope of this presentation, but it's a very important component of the investigative and fraud prevention and analysis and investigation. They do a lot of different things. They look at both internal fraud issues and external fraud issues. They look at administrative investigations. If you go to ignet.gov, this has a whole wealth of information that talks about the different types of positions, the different types of investigations and audits, and what they find and how they quantify it, and what it means to ensure that government is running effectively and efficiently. Just a wealth of great information and knowledge. I am a big proponent of internships. I did 3 in my undergraduate days. I was with the Postal Inspection Service, I was with the Export-Import Bank of the United States, and I was with the Department of Homeland Security, Bureau of Citizenship and Immigration Services, just after it was stood up, and I worked for the first director. Really amazing opportunities, just a wealth of really good exposure to a lot of different things. There are so many internships out there, federal, state, and local. Take advantage of them all. They're just a smattering of options here, but really do your research and look at what they have to offer. So most everybody is probably familiar with usajobs.gov. It is the portal. It is not the best, but it is vastly improved in the 15 years that I have been in the government. It's done much, much better. And we'll dive into it here in the next slide. So I believe strongly in setting alerts and doing very targeted searches for what you're looking for. So I basically run 4 different types of alerts. Once you log in or set up your account, log in, you can create these searches very easily, set the alerts very easily based on these different types of searches. I strongly believe you should have a job series search. So if you're specifically searching for an 1811, have an 1811 job series. If you are interested in a specific type of agency, not just a specific agency, but a type of agency, definitely run those. Remember, sometimes it's about getting into the agency no matter what job series it is, just because that's once you're in, it's so much easier to move up and move around and move over. Obviously, keywords can be very helpful. Sometimes, especially in the technology, this is how new jobs are identified, so use keywords. And then, of course, if your situation is limited to geographic location, you can search by city, county, or state. I highly recommend state just because it will encompass all three. And of course, multiple states, multiple, if you're in the DC, Baltimore, Virginia area, that's definitely important. You may have heard of KSAs, knowledge, skills, and abilities. This has changed drastically over my time. It used to be a required essay form that you had to specifically address. Most of those are now basically either yes, no, or type graded questions, ranging from very limited experience to very senior experience, and you basically answer what is most applicable to you based on your resume. However, I do think it's important to know what KSAs are and have been, because you never know, they may come back. Basically, it is how you describe your experience, your training, or your education to specific areas. So, for example, application of law, investigative techniques, interview and interrogation, or white-collar crime, report writing, document and financial analysis skills, testifying, preparing witnesses, writing affidavits, as well as other agency-specific or technical areas. So you may want to pay very close attention to these. Think about the many times before you apply, there is an opportunity to preview the questions, especially now that they're in these kind of, most senior to least senior, or least experienced kind of gradation. Take a look at those. Really think about them. Take a very close look at them. And of course, for KSAs, when they were on the essay, important things, keywords, the vacancy announcement, these are all really good things to still think about. The other thing is when you write a short summary, maybe even bullet points in your resume, think about the context, the action, and the result. Those are really important things to be able to draw out of and enable you to stand above other candidates. So this is a screenshot from USA Jobs, and you can see we've talked about there are such a varying ways of authorities and targeted demographic information, specific jobs. Most of the jobs that you will be looking for fall under the open to the public category. If you're a veteran, obviously those. If you are a military spouse, those. And then also current federal employees. I want to absolutely highlight, however, that there is a really robust section for students and recent graduates. Do not overlook this. This is actually really important, especially while you're in school. We talked earlier about pathways. When you click on this link, it will take you to a full description of what that means, how that works, what the process is, things to think about. Definitely take advantage of that. Take a look at what that says and what it means. So I highly recommend spending some time on that specific part. So if you're an undergraduate, you'll definitely want to consider graduate school or internships, or graduate school with internships as well. If you have already graduated and are looking to maybe do a career change. Obviously, getting to USA Jobs, and depending on what your situation is and your experience, you should probably be starting to apply right away. Certainly you can adapt as either you get feedback or in going through the interview process, you can make updates. I strongly encourage that. I strongly encourage a cover letter, a very specific cover letter to that agency as well. Do your research. If you are looking to move into the investigative space and have no experience, there are two things to consider: either retail loss prevention or a bank and financial security, and be able to do that. These are great ways to get experience in a career profession that is very closely aligned with investigation, fact-finding, things like that. Again, any experience, whether it's an audit or management, any professional experience is great experience. Again, because you're able to get those skills and focus on developing the core skills and essential things that are foundational for any type of position. Definitely highly encourage it. Obviously, any kind of law enforcement, local or state police or prosecutors' offices, or any other federal positions, even contractors, great opportunities. So here, just a sampling of some non-1811 positions. For example, the Department of Labor office. There's an office that oversees labor union embezzlement investigations and oversees the union elections to ensure a free and fair election. There's also the Employment Benefit Security Administration, EBSA, which hires auditors and investigators to examine pension funds and identify and work to bring charges when people essentially steal from those pension funds. There's the DEA diversion investigator positions with the Department of Justice. The background investigations that are now done by the Defense Security and Counterintelligence Agency. Compliance investigators from the USDA's Risk Management Agency doing farm loan investigations. There's the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission and their investigators, as well as the Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service. So there's just a wide variety, and this is just a small sample. Definitely watch USA Jobs for those. We touched on this, but I think it's really important. Contracting is such a huge part of the government now, especially after 9/11. It was a way to bring people on very, very quickly and get things done in a very efficient, effective manner. Contractors, employment with contractors is a great way to get experience both in an agency or in a certain specific field, because these contracts assist and support the agency core missions. So they may not be doing the investigations, but they're doing a part of the investigation or supporting one or more elements that go into that. Contracts can range from positions can range from very, very specific technical experience all the way to general assistants, file clerks, or legal assistants, or just any other administrative support staff. And of course, there are multiple types of contractors, and they're always changing. So I encourage you to explore and review all those salaries and benefits and their website. These are 3 different federal sites that actually discuss the awarding of contracts. You can actually do some research on who has the contract and who's been awarded the contract, who is bidding for a contract, so you can target your resume and look at their website. Most of them have very extensive employment websites. So definitely do not discount the ability to work as a federal contractor. Oftentimes it's the best and easiest way to get the experience that you need in order to move to the next level. So to wrap up here, just a couple few tips. Obviously, many agencies are now on LinkedIn, so highly encourage you to set up your profile, take advantage of many of the resources at the Career Center to be able to do this, and to have your own profile be very effective. You don't need to connect necessarily with influencers, but you can certainly follow them and their activity and see what they are commenting on and looking at. So that can be very useful as well. Also join a professional association and think about getting a professional certification if you've already graduated or already done graduate school. Those are definitely very helpful as well. Many of the professional associations do have a student membership, so look into that. Highly recommend that. If you finished your undergraduate, and you can either take part-time graduate courses or consider a shorter certificate program or course to be able to really elevate specific skills or focus without having to do a whole new degree. Depending on where you are, what you're doing, where you're looking at, all of those things should come into play, but certainly focusing on business and accounting if that's an area that you need to develop. Any kind of white-collar crime, fraud investigation, that sort of thing. Technology, cybersecurity, litigation technology, computer forensics, any of that is a huge benefit. Definitely look into that. And then obviously data analysis. Everything is data centric now, so take a look at that. I really hope this has been helpful. Obviously we just skimmed the surface. This was a presentation that I dusted off the other day, and I thought there's still a lot of really good and useful information in here, and I've only been able to supplement it and hopefully make it as useful as possible. So again, it's a mere introduction, but I hope that you will consider some form of federal public service as a career opportunity. I think it's a wonderful area. You can get great experience and really make a true difference. So good luck. If you need anything or have any questions, feel free to let me know. And other than that, have a wonderful day.